what if you could just open up someone's mind and see what's inside? Well, back in the 60s, the CIA thought hypnosis might be the key. Today, we're cracking open their declassified playbook to see exactly what they found out. Okay, picture this. It's 1960. The Cold War is at its absolute peak. The CIA is looking for any advantage they can get in this huge game of espionage. And that led them to this really tantalizing question. Could hypnosis be the ultimate weapon, the key to unlocking an enemy's deepest, darkest secrets? And the answers they found? Well, they were all written down in this study, Hypnosis in Interrogation. For decades, this thing was for official eyes only, but today, we're going to use its pages as our guide to separate the Hollywood fantasy from the cold, hard reality. So, first things first, we've got to talk about the popular image of hypnosis. You know what I'm talking about. We've all seen it in the movies. The swinging pocket watch, the subject's eyes glazing over, and suddenly they're a puppet ready to spill every secret. But is that really how it works? The common idea, and the study even mentions this, is that you have this powerful hypnotist who just dominates a weaker mind. But the CIA's own researchers, they were skeptical of this whole animal magnetism theory right from the start. They wanted to see what the science actually said. And almost immediately, the CIA's investigation hit a major roadblock. It turns out the problem wasn't finding a hypnotist with a super strong will. No, the real issue was something much more fundamental to how hypnosis even works. And this really gets to the heart of it. Pop culture imagines this big battle of wills. But what the study found is that getting into a trance isn't about being conquered. It's about the subject's desire to cooperate. It's actually a collaboration. I mean, think about it. Where do we usually see hypnosis? In therapy, where a patient wants to get better, in a scientific study where the subject wants to help out, on stage where the volunteer wants to be part of the show. The CIA study points out that all of these situations have one thing in common, a built-in motivation to cooperate. In enemy interrogation room, that's a completely different ballgame. And this brings us to the million-dollar question. What if the subject isn't motivated to help? What if they're actively hostile, fighting you every single step of the way? Can you actually force them into a trance against their will? But okay, let's just play devil's advocate for a second. Let's say an interrogator could somehow magically induce a trance. That just leads to the next, even bigger problem. Can you actually make someone betray their own deeply held beliefs? Can you force them to act against their own will? The study brings up this fantastic old experiment. A researcher named Pierre Jeanette hypnotized a woman and told her to commit a bunch of fake murders with, rubber daggers and sugar tablets. She did it, no problem. But later, when he had his assistants tell her to undress, she woke up immediately. She knew the difference between playing a game and a real violation of her values. Now, to be fair, the CIA researchers were thorough. They looked at the counter-arguments too. And yeah, there were some studies where subjects under hypnosis did seem to commit antisocial acts, like stealing money or even hitting a superior officer. But here's the catch they found. In every single one of those cases, the subjects on some level knew it wasn't real. The person telling them to steal money was a trusted doctor. The officer they were told to hit was part of a sanctioned experiment. They were basically role-playing because they knew they were in a safe, controlled environment. All right, so making someone do something is pretty much off the table. But what about just getting information? Can hypnosis at least guarantee you get a perfect, crystal clear memory of what happened? So, to test this, researchers looked at something called age regression. This is where a hypnotist supposedly takes a subject all the way back to their childhood. And it can be incredibly convincing. The subject talks and acts just like a 6-year-old. But is it a real memory? Well, the study found the evidence was overwhelmingly against it. The drawings they made looked like an adult's idea of a child's drawing. Brain scans showed zero change. Subjects would confidently name the wrong teacher. It's a performance, a really, really good one for sure, but it's not a time machine for your brain. And all of this leads to the single most important question for any intelligence officer. Even if you get someone talking under hypnosis, are they actually telling you the truth? And the answer, according to the CIA's own research, was a clear, definite yes. A person under hypnosis can absolutely lie, especially if they have a powerful reason to, like, say, protecting their country. Hypnosis is not some magical truth serum. So if you can't force a trance, you can't make people do things, and the information you get might be a total lie, you might be thinking, was this whole investigation a bust? Well, not exactly. The study's authors actually stumbled onto a much more subtle and maybe even more powerful psychological game. They called it the hypnotic situation, and the idea is brilliant. The goal isn't to actually hypnotize the target, the goal is to convince the target that they have been hypnotized. This makes them feel like they're no longer responsible for what they say or do. It's like a psychological get-out-of-jail-free card. And they laid out a whole playbook for it. First, you build up rumors about the interrogator's magical powers. Then you create this whole theatrical setting, a magic room, maybe even use some drugs to make them feel out of it. You use hidden tricks like a concealed heater to prove your power. And the result, the subject, now convinced they're powerless, can collaborate without the crushing weight of being a traitor. They can just tell themselves, it wasn't my fault, I was hypnotized. So after all this digging into trances and mind control and memory, what was the agency's final verdict? Was hypnosis a useful tool for interrogation or not? This table really sums it up perfectly. On every single point, the myth just falls apart. Forcing a trance? Extremely doubtful. Making someone do something? Nope. Getting the truth? The info could be lies or just fantasy. The real weapon wasn't the hypnotic trance at all. It was the idea of the trance, the hypnotic situation, which could be used to help a subject get over their own guilt. And this final quote from the study's author just nails it. The real power isn't in some kind of mystical mind control. It's in manipulating a person's perception of their own responsibility. And that leaves us with a much, much bigger question, doesn't it? The CIA went looking for a way to control enemy spies, but what they really found was this fundamental insight into human psychology. If the situation around us can be engineered to make us feel like we're no longer responsible for our actions, what does that say about free will? How much of our own behavior is truly ours? That's something to think about.